last December. So this was to a certain extent, although there was some debates inside the university at this respect, but it was much more a top-down decision than a bottom-up decision. And this puts to the universities very huge challenges. And the main challenge is what can we do to make this initiative felt as an initiative owned by the whole community. And to design the answers to this kind of challenge, probably it's very interesting to listen to people that for 3 years have been involved in such an adventure, I'd say. Because when we decided to participate in ARQUS, our intention was to be involved in something with a huge potential of transformation of the institution. And these are some reasons why we are looking forward to hearing from you, from your experience, and also from your perspectives about the future. Dorothy as ARQUS coordinator, Fernando as project manager, they are the real souls of this project. So I think that there are lessons that we can learn from them, but we also think that we have some contribution that we can give to ARQUS. So Dorothy, I'll pass immediately the floor to you. And once again, thank you very much for being with us in this closing session of the ARQUS Hour, as Manuel João mentioned, in its first edition. Thank you very much.
Okay, can you hear me? I have to apologize because I do not have very much voice. I'm very sorry. Can I say, first of all, Rector, colleagues, it is a very, very great pleasure for me to be here in person, because we were able, Fernando and I, to join the first session of the ARQUS Hour some weeks ago, but online. And can I say, it is simply not the same. So we are absolutely delighted to be here in person, to have this opportunity to get to know the university, to get to know your campuses, but particularly to get to know you, the people, because of course universities are all about people. So thank you very much for your hospitality. Apologies, as I said, for my voice. So I will speak for as long as my voice allows me to have this opportunity to get to know the university, to get to know
recording in progress.
If I have, particularly to get to know you, the people. And if I have a problem, Fernando will are all about jump in and take over. So thank you very much for your hospitality, because we have discovered that the root of my problem is air conditioning. So apologies if it's a little bit warm in the room. It's my fault. And as long as the university to get to know.
Recording in progress.
Congratulate the University of Minho on this initiative of the ARQUS If I have a problem, I think it's a wonderful initiative. To bring not the community of the university, we have discovered that, but also the community of the other ARQUS. So apologies if it's my fault in Wrocław, in Poland, together to have a look over the past few weeks at what we have been doing over the past 3 years, and today to have a glimpse of the future and to see the future that we are building together. And I think, Rector, you have a lot to contribute. And if I can say, our two new partners, Wrocław and Minho, have already contributed a great deal to the construction of the future planning of the Alliance. I'm going to try to outline just some major ideas without going into too much detail, but we will perhaps have time later to go into some detail, both in the exchange at this session and in other meetings later on. And I think the first thing that I would like to pick up on is that the European Universities Initiative truly has the potential to transform our European universities, to bring our universities well into the 21st century and to help us to respond to societal needs, to the huge societal needs, the huge challenges which our societies are facing in the 21st century. The European Commission, in its initial call, way back in 2018, spoke of the 3 S's, and I think these 3 S's are still very, very important. They spoke of structural, systemic, and sustainable transformation of our universities. Now, in order to effect structural, systemic, and sustainable transformation, clearly we cannot work in short-term mode. And I think this is one of the major messages that we feel we want to share with you. And that is, this is not just another European project. This is a long-term initiative which has as its overall objective and goal to transform our universities together. So it's not just about transforming individual universities, but it's about bringing our strengths together, being complementary, and moving forward together with those European values, which the rector has also mentioned and which are so important. And I think we have all this year really had to waken up to just how important those core European values are on our continent. I don't think any of us expected ever to live through a war on European soil. And certainly we did not when we wrote the first application for ARQUS, nor did we expect to live through a pandemic. So these past 2 years have really, I think, been a reality check, and a reality check which we need to respond to. So that said, in representation of that long-term commitment, the Alliance has established a mission statement. I think we mentioned it in the first session, so I'm not going to go through it again. A mission statement which is valid up to 2032, that is, its horizon is 2032. Clearly starts with a little bit more detail in the roadmap, and then is, of course, more open for the future, because we cannot plan in detail for 10 years. I'm not sure we can even plan in detail for the next 12 months. So, so you have that mission statement, you're familiar with it. The mission statement looks at how we can together become a forward-looking, innovative, research-based university serving our societies and promoting excellence for all. So inclusion is a very central value for our Alliance, and I think it's important to underline that. In order to address these challenges, and there are huge challenges in working together, I think we all know that even at individual universities, there are huge challenges in strategic planning for the future. When we bring 8 universities together from 8 different countries, 7 different languages, plus English. We're using a language which is not the official language of any of our institutions. Clearly, there are huge challenges to overcome, but there is also a huge amount of institutional learning happening. We learn a great deal from each other. And ARQUS at the very, very beginning of our work together, decided to define ourselves as a laboratory for institutional learning. And that is what we really want to continue to be. Structurally, and I think maybe we could have the slide on the screen. It's just one slide, it's just an image, and it's really an aide-mémoire rather than anything else. Structurally, ARQUS as a European university works in the three major missions of all of our universities. So we work, of course, in education, and in particular in innovation, in learning and teaching. We work in research and innovation, with a little bridge there that we always like to mention in ARQUS, because we always feel that it is an essential element, and that is the doctoral cycle. We believe the doctoral cycle is a key cycle for our universities and for our alliance, because apart from traditionally being the bridge between the educational mission of universities and the research mission of universities, it is also the future. Our doctoral candidates are the future of academia, and they are the future of our service to society. So to us, the doctoral cycle is key there. And of course, then the fourth element is our societal engagement, our service to society, reaching out to our 8 local ecosystems and attempting to bring our 8 local systems together, because they are also complementary to each other. And developing in general, and I think when we say outreach, we're not thinking only purely in terms of the economic ecosystems of our regions and of our cities, but also of the cultural heritage and so on, and ensuring that we understand each other better. Within Europe, there are huge cultural differences. We sometimes assume that there are not, and that we all understand each other, and that, but if we have learned something over the past 3 years, it is that even in the detail of how you run a meeting and how you address specific issues, timetables, what can I say? Coming from Granada, where the day is organized in a very different way to the rest of Europe, and Portugal, of course, is in the rest of Europe. You have much more sensible. I think you have much more sensible timetables than we do. But all of these seemingly unimportant things, which can in fact cause considerable irritation and so on and so forth, are at the heart also of our institutional learning. At the very, very heart of ARQUS as an alliance are people. And as I said, universities are all about people. Learning is all about people. And we have, and we hope for the future, to give even greater emphasis to people at the center of our activities. So if you look in the center of that little circle there, you can see 3 groups of people who form our universities. There's nothing new about that. Students, academics, and professional staff. And one of the major challenges which we have, but one of the very important objectives which we have, is to form communities. So to form communities of practice amongst our academics, to form communities of practice amongst our professional staff, and to form communities amongst our students. You already have here the president of our student council, Duarte, who's doing a fantastic job. And I think the student council is a very, very interesting example of just how each of our universities can learn from the others and how student activity, student representation is organized. And also, of course, a very important driver for student-centered learning, truly student-centered and student-led learning. These communities will take different shapes and forms depending on the area, and we hope will be very bottom-up. So our approach to the next 4 years is that the alliance as such at central level should facilitate. It should create spaces for cooperation to happen. It should offer opportunities for cooperation to happen. And one of the forms that we will promote very, very actively is communities of practice. So if our libraries want to work together, and we would be delighted. And I know we've already started in the field of open science. Many of the people working in open science are from our libraries. But I think there is also a lot more we can do by pooling the resources of our university libraries. So if the libraries want to work together, the Alliance will facilitate the setting up of that community of practice and hopefully fund. I know this is always an important word, hopefully fund activities, allow face-to-face meetings alongside the inevitable online interaction. A very important form of community, which we will be devoting a great deal of effort to, are our 3 living labs. The Alliance, if you look at the left of the screen, established directors of the Alliance based on the strengths and the interests of all 8 universities, established 3 major priority areas, all of which are very interdisciplinary. This is important. The universities of the future will be much more interdisciplinary in their approaches to everything that we do. These are priority areas. They are not exclusive, and I think that is also very important, but they are areas where we will initially attempt to concentrate our efforts. So the first is artificial intelligence and the digital transformation, which of course is something we are all struggling with. The second, essential, climate change, sustainability. And the third, and as I said, I think we have been very, very sharply and unpleasantly reminded of the importance of European heritage and identity. So what we share and how our European values are so essential for the future of our societies. Those 3 major areas will each set up a living lab composed of students, academics, professional staff, external stakeholders in the form of companies, in the form of local governments, in the form of NGOs, in order to create challenge-based learning opportunities for our students, in order to create new research opportunities, in order to create new opportunities for transfer and innovation in our various ecosystems. I imagine you are probably familiar with the Living Lab concept. Alongside the 3 initial Living Labs, we will do 2 other things. One is to bring the 3 together. So although they are already very interdisciplinary, we will attempt also to have cross-fertilization amongst the 3. But we will also leave a door or a window open for other interdisciplinary areas to propose the setting up of new living labs and so on. Now, excuse me just a second. three major cross-cutting strategies which will help us to do all of these different activities. The first is mobility. The Alliance has already signed an open mobility agreement, which allows all of us, students, academics, professional staff, to move freely around all of the universities, or as freely as our current capacity allows us, without the need for specific bilateral agreements. Now, this is an essential tool in order to promote the communities, the trust, which we need in order to move forward together. And I would encourage you all very, very much to make very good use of this opportunity, which basically means that any member of staff and any student within the calls which the universities organize can say, I would like to go to Graz because I know they're working on something that's really interesting for me. Can you help me to organize that? So I think this is a very important instrument. But I would also like to comment that we're looking to innovate in mobility. So we're not just talking about traditional semester-long mobility for students or one-week teaching mobility or a short research stay. We're looking at blended mobility. We're looking, of course, at virtual mobility. We're looking at short-term mobility. But we're also looking, for example, at mobility between our incubators. So the incubators, which many of our universities have for startups and so on, I think one of the most innovative experiences we have had and which we would like to promote further has been to allow startups from one ARQUS university to spend time at an incubator in another ARQUS university and internationalize in passing their business model and their project. Inclusive mobility. Mobility for those groups who traditionally are not involved in international mobility. And I'll link that into our second major enabler, and I stop. You didn't expect my voice to last for this long. Neither did I. Inclusion and diversity, with the whole idea of not leaving anyone behind and of full respect for all the communities who form our university. So a very, very important element for the Alliance, an element which we have worked on for 3 years and which will be key to everything we do in the future. And I know it is also very dear to the University of Minho as a central policy. And thirdly, as an enabler, multilingualism, plurilingualism, and intercultural competence. So, as I said, I'm here speaking English, coming from a Spanish university and a Portuguese university with a Polish university listening in to us. And normally we also have, of course, French-speaking, German-speaking, Lithuanian-speaking, Italian-speaking colleagues with us too. We're using English. But we believe that an essential part of European identity is plurilingualism. And what we really want to do within the Alliance is to promote that plurilingual approach to everything that we do. And alongside that, the intercultural competence, which helps us to understand each other. It's not just the words, it's what goes with the words, it's what underlies the words that really helps us to understand each other. So those enablers are important, and I don't think I'm going to go into the detail of the actual tools. I think it's much better if I, perhaps Fernando, as our consortium manager, would pick up on something I will have forgotten. Okay. And if not,
Just briefly also to mention before opening the floor for questions, I think that's the important part of this session. It's one thing that I will invite you all is to dream a little bit what the university of the future will be for you. I think that we need to dream without the current mindsets and legislative frameworks that might give us a very close framework to work. So there are things that today are not possible, but they may be possible in the future if we work together to make them possible. And I think that has been a learning experience that we learned during these 3 years in ARQUS. What we wrote in the initial application, there were things that were not allowed by law in certain countries. And by working together, we managed actually to be able to do them. So I think that that's the thing. I mean, the application is a core application, is the basics, but there is much more than that. So don't dare to dream and don't dare to come to proposals to the ARQUS team, to the rector, to the vice rector team and the ARQUS team here. Because one of the things that we want to do together is precisely to dream about the university of the future and get there together. And I think that will be, we have some tools, will not be sufficient for sure, but they will be the start of it. And then we will make use of the human resources, but also other resources that we could pull together to get there. So I think that will be my main message now.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. Thank you very much, Fernando. Before passing the floor to people from the audience, let me underline two topics that were mentioned. The first is that we are speaking about a I think you use these words, a long-term initiative. It's not a short-term project, it's a long-term initiative. And the second aspect I'd like to underline has to do with this, the first one, and that's with the future of the university and the university of the future. I think that we need to have always in our minds when we think about how this initiative will evolve, the fact that more and more they are common, the statements by people with huge responsibilities at level of the European Commission. When we look at documents, recommendations that were recently published, we can see there how central for the development of the European higher education area European universities are. So we need to have this in mind when we look at ARQUS, because we are looking at the future of the university and of the future of the universities. So just to make these 2 points, and now I'll pass the word to you, saying in advance that you can put your questions in at least in Spanish, French, Portuguese, and English. Italian. Dutch, I think it will be a little bit more difficult, probably. Yeah. And Polish. It's not so easy too. No.
Not if I can interpret.
I don't know if Patricia is listening to us now. Okay, so please make your points, statements, questions, whatever.
Also suffering from a throat issue. Okay. My question is about the sharing experience, sharing resources. Are there any good examples to highlight of sharing infrastructures, research infrastructures in the ARQUS alliances? And also add a second question regarding I saw in the slide the innovation fund. Could you comment on that? What is this?
Can we listen from other participants just to have 2 or 3 questions or statements or whatever? Eloy, you want to say something?
Just a practical question. So I have a couple of dreams. My practical question is practical. How can we engage and start working with that? So how can I share the dreams of Minho with other people, especially on the open science agenda. I know the work that already was done was very good, but how can we move forward? It's a very practical one. So how can we start to share the dreams and try to build them into reality?
What are the platforms that are available to share these ideas? You have. Okay.
I'm connecting with the question of Eloy. I was wondering if you could talk about, I'm sure there are a number of people that are collaborating already within the Alliance, well, between the institutions before the Alliance. So what's the added value? What's in for this? What can the Alliance do for this and for other people?
Okay, I think we have these three questions. Dorothy, Fernando? Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll start. Let me see, infrastructure. What we've done in the first 3 years has been to ask each university to identify the research infrastructure which they have available to share with partners. And there's a database under development in order to facilitate access. So the idea is that researchers within ARQUS would have easy access as if they belonged to the institution which houses the equipment. And the database is under development. It's a pilot database, and the idea is that slowly it will grow and that we will include an increasing number of infrastructure of equipment and hopefully also not just equipment, but also data. I'm thinking here of open data and so on, and facilitate access to what is available at all the universities. So that is also partly an answer to Manuel's last comment, is being in the Alliance should facilitate access which is not normally available through standard bilateral agreements. Yeah, I think that's the one thing. Your second question.
The Innovation Fund.
The Innovation Fund, right? Yes. The Innovation Fund is something that we want to set up with two major objectives. One is to offer a series of scholarships to students coming from outside the Alliance to study within the Alliance. The idea being that it's not just come to study at the University of Leipzig, but rather come to study at ARQUS. So you spend a time at Leipzig and then you spend some time in Wrocław, or you spend some time in Padua and you spend some time in Minho. With the idea of full master's programs or particularly full doctoral programs. So that's one of the elements that we want to include in this talent fund. The other, however, I think is probably more interesting in response to your question, and that is that it would be seed funding for all sorts of bottom-up initiatives from the university communities in all 8 universities, with a very, very open call. We would like to do this, and we would like to do it at Alliance level with Alliance partners. Can you give us some basic funding so we can organize the first meeting, so we can start the first, in particular to allow us then to have access to larger scale funding in the major programs. So that's the idea of the Innovation Fund. We are, of course, dependent here on external funding, so we're still waiting for the results of the application round to see just how much we can invest there. But we think that is very, very important, because I think what we have learned over the 3 years is we can pre-plan some of what we're doing, but you can't pre-plan everything, and you shouldn't pre-plan everything, because creativity is clearly at the heart of innovation, and so we need to allow space for bottom-up initiatives of that kind. What can you do to work further, to move further forward in open science? The group already exists and the group is active. So I would hope that the group working in open science would become a stable community of practice, a stable community, which would work together to further the open science and open access agenda in general. Any doubts about that through the local ARQUS officer? So the structure is that we have a central coordination unit under Fernando's supervision, which is in Granada, but each university has an ARQUS unit. So you will be familiar, I'm sure, with your local ARQUS unit, and Manuel and Vanessa can tell you a lot more about that. But the local ARQUS unit would point you in the right direction. So who should you contact to make sure? But I think in your case, you're already in touch with the people working in open science, I hope. And the idea, in fact, is if anyone has an idea for a new community of practice, one that doesn't exist, again, through the ARQUS officer to say, I would really like to try to set up this community of practice and see what the partners are doing in this field. And so that would be the direct path. Maybe Fernando would like to speak a little bit more about the platform and the digital support that we hope to set up.
I think this is a little bit like the construction of the European Union, and same that nowadays we have in our passports, okay, I'm a Portuguese citizenship, but it also says European Union. This is a little bit what we want to achieve through the alliance. Also, like you belong to the University of Minho, but by belonging to the University of Minho, you belong to the ARQUS community. And that gives you access to the healthcare, a common currency, and a lot of facilities that you will not have otherwise. So our idea is to establish a digital platform that will facilitate this collaboration. You will not need a further identifier. So with the identifier of the University of Minho, you could access those resources in order to collaborate with teams and peers from your universities, but also to access to the different calls and the seed fundings we will have, but also where we will put our joint academic offer, both in terms of courses for students and staff, but also a way of collaboration for our possible degree programs we will have. And that's meant to be the main meeting point, virtual meeting point during this time. Like we have learned that digital collaboration is key to sustain the alliance. It doesn't replace face-to-face meetings, but it's key to maintain that contact meanwhile. So that's what we want to do. We put some ideas on the first application. We hope that they will be a go ahead from the Commission side, but we need to also look at other resources in order to have this platform growing. It's just the key start. And we will need to add up based on your input, on your ideas. I think that's important. And the issue is really like what we want to is to facilitate, like students can be mobile without language certificates, that we can move without bilateral agreements. So that idea of the roaming of a single currency, that's exactly the same equivalent to the alliance idea.
Thank you very much. I think that we have time for some other questions, although I should remember you that this is an ARQUS hour, not ARQUS 2 hours or ARQUS day. Okay. So, anyone wants to put a question or say something?
Hi, everyone. Paulo. I'd like that you share with us the lessons learned from the first 2 years. What were the most important lessons learned from the first project? And additionally, it will be very useful if you can share with us things to avoid. Don't go in that direction. That's the wrong direction. It will be very important to us for us to for the next 3 years. Thank you.
Do you want to start? Yeah, go on.
What? Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all doing well, especially our colleagues following us. So a very brief question, which is regarding ARQUS and mostly thinking forwards. What is expected, especially since we're speaking with a coordinating team, from a student side? From that question is really how involved should students be? And we've talked a lot about this, so I know that you want them very involved. But what do you expect them to do? How do you expect them to participate? How much? And really, if we should think about, for example, when you talk about ARQUS ambassadors from Work Package 4, how we should train students from local universities to be able to participate in ARQUS, because this is, for example, speaking on myself, I've been a student representative for a while, and even for me, these are new topics. So I'm sure that for a lot of my colleagues, they will be fairly new topics as well. So how should we prepare the students to be able to partake in ARQUS?
Anyone? Okay, so
Fernando.
thank you again. Just let me at a very short.
I actually gonna answer. Do you want to add? Sorry, sorry.
Just very brief. When we were discussing the format of this session during our lunch, I told both of you that something that is in our mind is always the expectations. The expectations that you, as University of Granada, and you, as ARQUS, you have towards the role of the University of Granada. That's some another topic.
Yeah, I will try to be brief also.
Yes, we have 5 minutes.
That's good, the directors actually. It's keeping us on track. Trying to answer your question, I think it's a little bit of the same. The answer to both questions. I think building trust, that's key, because we are universities that normally will have some sort of collaboration already, and we have seen it that between Minho and Granada, for example, there were already many collaborations. But trust is key in order to build something together. That goes along with flexibility. So that if we have trust, we have to be a little bit more flexible on how to apply certain things. Maybe we don't need to be extremely strict in certain regulations or in certain rules that we can make more flexible, and also to have an open mind in order to be able to understand each other better and to get things done in a reasonable and efficient time. Because we want to impose our way of thinking, our way of doing things, our cultural thing, from the University of Minho towards the rest of the Alliance, that simply will not work. Those have been the more pressing challenges we had at the beginning. I think that was very challenging also because of the pandemic. Not meeting face to face was very difficult to build trust, to create flexibility, and to open minds. And I think that's the challenge. And I think precisely what the University of Minho brings is fresh air to the Alliance, with a young university, which is also very vibrant, and with the very interesting initiatives that we have been hearing through the meetings these days. And I think that experience, that push, will help the Alliance to go a little bit farther than we will have gone if you will not have incorporated into the Alliance. So I'm really confident that Minho actually is an added value to the ARQUS Alliance. That was for you.
How much should students be involved? What do we expect of students? As there's no limit. Okay, so the idea for us, the Alliance is an alliance for the whole university community. So we really expect students to be as proactive as you want to be. We really hope that students will make proposals. That was not just ask what's in the work plan, what do you want us to do? We want you to
Let me change.
battery issue or something. Yeah. Thanks. So the ambassadors program, like almost all the programs that we'll be setting up, are programs that need some kind of prior preparation, some kind of prior training. So we will work at alliance level on how to train the trainers of those who then at local level will train the student ambassadors. So we will work on that together. We'll work on that together from the experience of these 3 years in trying to involve students and in communicating what the Alliance is all about. But I think we are entering a new phase, and not just because of the funding, but because we're coming out of a pandemic. And I think it is very, very different now. It is lessons learned. Lessons learned. We need to know each other in person. And once you know each other in person, then you can work online. But to try to establish trust online is extremely, extremely difficult. So we're entering a new phase where we are also hoping that there will be more student mobility, so there will be more opportunities for students to know each other, to get to know the institutions, and to feed in to the whole program. But please, proactivity.
Very much time. I don't know if and closing remarks and balance or no. 2 sentences. Can always come here. It can always come here.
If I can say, I think I'm very happy with how the initiative developed. I was just looking it up. We have over 750 visualizations of the sessions, which means that they are there and they are being visualized. And this is probably one of the most important assets that all of us who work in the project, all members in the Alliance, I would say, have for the future. And I would like really to thank all those who contributed from all the universities in the Alliance, because all participated. I hope that the team here in Minho is now much more acquainted with details about the Alliance, but not only the team in Minho. I hope everyone is more aware of the exciting opportunities that the Alliances provide for us and what the Alliance can do for all of us. And so let's engage and really let's contribute. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.